So I think it was the transition of persons in the finance office.
Okay.
So what salaries is, we used to have Chief Briggs, myself, and Rich St. Hilaire were the three EMDs, emergency management directors. Usually there's just one director and one assistant director, but we're back, years ago with Rich and Chief Briggs, we all worked very well together, so we all kind of tackled it at the same time. Usually, previous to that, it's $3,000, $2,000 would go to the EMD, and $1,000 would go to the assistant director.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if that offsets, with increased staff, you see increased revenue coming in ambulance revenue?
Yes, but not on a side-by-side increase. Revenue only comes with calls. So we do have probably one of the largest per capita over 65 or 55 aged homes with Lamplighter and Granite Fields and All-American. So that's the more revenue brought in is really just coinciding with the amount of calls. So they fluctuate up and down, but it's generally 300,000 that we bring in every year.
The line item, if you're looking at the revenue, it's under department revenue.
Chief, if I could just go back, one thing, two questions on the fire department budget. It still seems like the electricity and the heat are pretty substantial. And I know that was supposed to be really wicked energy efficient and all that stuff in it. Is that as good as it's going to get, do you think? Or are they
I hope not. So the electricity, Paula actually flagged it for us. So we actually have two services that come in, one for the building and one for the fire pump. So the fire pump is running pretty expensive, and the fire pump doesn't run unless we test it or there's an emergency. So I'm in the process of contacting Unitil and trying to figure out why that's so much. The heat, we actually have Denron Hall, who installed all of our HVAC and plumbing. They're coming in on Monday to try to hone things in and figure it out one last time before. It's kind of like the punch list from the builder. So they're coming in on Monday to try to work on that as well.
Okay. So hopefully they will both go down or something.
Yeah, so like one major thing is we have 4 zones of radiant floor in the apparatus bays. One hasn't worked from day one, so we need to figure out if there's a, air gap or, blockage or whatever the case is. So just trying to, and when we were building the building, Rich St. Hilaire, even with his building, which is just basically a garage, he said it would probably take a good 5 years before you could really pinpoint, the exact settings to save money. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for. If we can make it a little bit better, I'd be happy.
All right, thank you.
And I hope solar goes on the landfill.
Thank you. Thank you. We do too.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I have one more.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
in these numbers, it is the two additional bodies, correct, in the salary line?
No.
They're not?
No, it'll be a separate warrant article, similar to what we did last March was, hire 2 new people at this rate for the remaining 9 months of the year.
But the money is here.
No. For the 2 additional, that's a new thing. You have the 2 new additional that were approved last year in the warrant article. They hit this year's budget. So when you look at last year's actual or last year's budget compared to this year's, there's 2 additional salaries from last year's warrant article. And then if the warrant article passes again, there'd be 2 more new ones hitting next year's budget.
2024 budget.
Yes.
So is the $1,024,000 include those 2 new firefighters?
The 2 from last year, yes. Numbers 3 and 4 are
Not in the budget
So
line yet until.
so how much is that warrant article going to be for?
It's 100 and some odd thousand.
Last year?
Yeah, it's like 100 something thousand. That was their pay for
And
9 months,
everything
their
else.
benefits, like,
So about 130,000?
it was something like that, yeah.
Wasn't the thought with the warrant article that the salary call personnel would decrease?
So I remember talking about that last year and looking for it. So I dropped the per diem line this year because of those two people. I think I only dropped it to 7,000. So what I need to look at for next year is the model of extra coverage, meaning right now you need two people to transport on the ambulance. So if somebody here, had a medical issue, we'd have to have two people here, they'd have to bring you to the hospital. During the day, you have myself and Kelly who could run a second ambulance, especially with the completion of All-American over the last couple of years. We're hitting multiple calls at once a lot more often. And we, like I said, we do rely on mutual aid, and as much as we give it, we receive it. So that would probably be looked at next year. Obviously, I don't know if the two people will pass in March, so I kind of need a backup plan for that as well.
How does it work with the fees? If, say that second ambulance, you're doing mutual aid, then when it comes to the billing, that revenue doesn't come to Kingston, it would go to the town that did the call.
No, it's whoever transports. So if we go to East Kingston to transport one of their residents,
But if we're short on people, and you have to call in East Kingston to help at All-American,
Correct.
East Kingston is getting that money.
yes.
So as far as more staffing possibly pulls into,
It does, and I'm putting, this isn't why we're putting somebody through paramedic schools, but we're putting Kevin Holter, one of my full-time guys, through medic school now. He'll be done in late 24, early 25, but transporting at a higher level, you can also charge more money.
all right, how about other questions?
What did you originally anticipate the per diem line decreasing by? So it decreased by 7,000, but we added 100,000 to the salary line.
Yep.
So I'm guessing you would hope to decrease it more in Clinton.
Yes, if next year, that's my hope. But again, I need to look at the decrease in participation by the call department, and it's kind of an overall balancing act to be able to cover the emergencies that we have in town, and with the minimal staffing and minimal fiscal responsibility, I guess.
So you would be able to adjust the call and the per diem?
Yeah, originally, 5 years ago, when I took over, the call line was about $80,000 or $120,000. And I took the majority of that and put it in per diem because, now our call line is $50,000 and we still don't spend all of it because we just don't have the call members.
Is that a line that you could reduce further from 55,000?
We can, the only problem is if we have a couple big events, a couple big fires, and we need that money, I don't know where else to pull it from. So again, any pay line, one of the things that I do and ensure is that I keep my line items, I'm not combining line items to get things or order things or pay people. So, I don't know what's spent, so 25,000 is spent out of the call line right now, so slowish year, but that other 25 will just go back to the general fund, or remain in the general fund, I guess.
Do the per diems have to go to the academy graduates?
Yes.
Okay.
And obviously, I think we're going to talk about this on November 15th, but I have one member that just joined the call department, and she's currently making $9.25. So the pay scale isn't high for the call members.
So how does that get changed?
Well, she has no certifications now, so she just comes on, she comes to meetings, training, helps us, she humps hose, she, fills bottles, all kinds of stuff. So we either need to raise the starting pay of a call firefighter, or as she gets more certifications,
So
she makes more money.
Who would raise the pay of a starting call firefighter?
I think that's you guys, right?
that's one of the things that they're working on, that wage matrix.
Oh, okay, that's the answer to my question.
Yeah. I mean, I can change it, but I need the money to back it up in that line item as well.
But have you asked that it be changed?
I'm part of the pay matrix committee working group, I don't know what we call ourselves, but
So is your involvement in that committee, is that a priority for you to raise that?
yes.
And what are you recommending be raised to?
So after research of other towns, we're looking at probably $18 an hour. But again, so $22 an hour for one of my full-time firefighters who's been through the academy, who now has to go into a burning building, deal with people on their worst day, when they could flip hamburgers at McDonald's for the same amount of money. So that's, obviously I understand, and my guys understand that even if we do get some sort of pay raise for the lower end guys and gals, it's not probably gonna happen in 1, 2, 3, 4 years. It may take time, but.
When we review the pay matrix on Wednesday, we'll see the fire department and the ranges that the other local departments are making, which adds to where some of the people that have been working in Kingston are going to, and the struggle we have with per diem and call members, because those salaries are, some of them are significantly lower than our surrounding towns.
You know, I'm asking probably the esoteric question, but after the tax increase last year, a lot of people's homes went up $400 or $500 a year, and it looks like that could happen again this year. And the reason I ask you about the future is, what is, I mean, some people can afford it obviously better than others, and so do you have any thoughts on, like, in terms of and I realize it's out of your fire department, but you as a taxpayer yourself, I mean, this has got to be a concern, and it's certainly a concern of all of us here, that, you know, at some point, there's a breaking point of people having to pay, you know, $400 or $500 more every year.
Sure.
Going forward, and it doesn't look like there's a lot of relief going ahead. Do you have any big picture thoughts on that?
So some of the things that I'm working on now, I don't know if they'll be out before March, but we don't, fire department wise, we don't charge a lot of inspections. We don't, and it's not gonna, I'm not gonna make $100,000 a year off of inspections, but the only thing we charge for now, and the fire department inspects, is solid fuel, so like a wood stove, a pellet stove. You know, we do life safety inspections for daycares and foster homes. We do assembly permit inspections for this building and any restaurant or church or any gathering place in town. Dunkin' Donuts that just went through a renovation, we went out and checked their fire alarm, the newly renovated fire alarm, and we were questioned by the builder, why don't you guys charge for that? 90% of other towns charge for that. So
What was your answer?
I'll look at it. So again, we're not gonna make a ton of money off of that, you know, $5, $10, $15, $20 for, you know, $30 for an inspection fee. But I think it's important.
That goes into the general fund.
Yes,
I find it ironic that we charge for wood stoves for people who probably have wood stoves because they can't afford electric and oil heat, but we don't charge Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, it just boggles my mind.
and that's the way
Well,
we've always done
it's not
business.
you, I mean,
So,
you've only been here a couple of years.
right,
You've
so that's,
inherited a
I'm
system.
trying to look outside the box and think of other ways to,
Right. Enhance revenues.
yes.
Yes, okay.
Flip side of that is, how much time does it take to do an inspection? How long is somebody away from the station to perform an inspection?
Depends on what it is, like Brian Gallant, who's my lieutenant and my inspector, he goes and does like the schools, they have to be done once a year. Probably takes him an hour to do the schools. For like the Dunkin' Donuts fire alarm, half hour maybe. So it's not a ton of time, but if it's, you know, money that we could collect, you know, and again, I'm not trying to break the bank on anybody, especially a taxpayer, but, you know, if there's services that are required by the town, then,
Right. The flip side I'm asking is, if we increase the number of inspections that your team does, how's that gonna cut into the hours that are already being provided to the firefighters?
I'm not suggesting we increase inspections, I'm suggesting that we charge a fee, particularly to commercial establishments, for required inspections and permits that they need in order to do business and make money. That's all.
To answer your question, as of right now, Brian does the inspections as many as he can on shift, but every person that we talk to, whether it's a business owner or a resident, we advise them that if we don't show up, we'll give you a call. We just had an emergency call. So, and typically I can help cover that emergency call, or Kelly during the day, or we kind of make it work. But 10, 15 years, if we all of a sudden have an influx of business, then we may be looking at a full-time inspector. But I don't see that happening right now with the minimal business that we have in town.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I have no
Yeah,
idea,
I just
Susan.
got a call from Susan that Adam said there's audio but not video. Yeah, it's recording, so when he comes in tomorrow, he'll actually get to
Put it on
post it.
YouTube
It's
or
just,
whatever.
we're trying to do it ourselves tonight, so.
Yeah. It's our first time.
Right, first time. It'll get better, so
By January, we will have this down.
guaranteed.
Of course, our last meeting's in December. Thank you. All right, next up. Decision day. No, warrant articles are decision day 2 is when they get presented. There's a deadline to the town of when they have to be turned in, and it's in January. I don't know the date off the top of my head.
Deadline is like January 15th.
Yeah.
And we discuss it the following week, because they have, up until that time. And then they usually go to DRA prior to them coming to committee to make sure they've been written correctly, and then we'll discuss them.
I asked my question, I said, if the vote, I wouldn't have known about a warrant article unless you mentioned it. And my thought process went to the per diem and the call lines go away. So I'm just trying to understand how warrant articles might impact some of these budgets and change the way we ask questions. So just food for thought. But
Well, some of that, like every year, I forget the amount, but it's, let's say, I don't know, 25 or 50,000, each one asks for, go into a capital reserve fund for vehicle replacement or whatever, so that there's gonna be $150,000, $200,000 worth of requests in warrant articles probably that we'll have to deal with, and we probably should keep that in the back of our minds in terms of the budget, I think.
hopefully this time they come equipped with what's in the fund currently, because that seems to be a hurdle every time we have this discussion, that they're like,
Seems that way.
yeah.
All right, let's get back to the
Should
presentation.
we email the department heads to ask them do they know what warrant articles they're putting in yet? No, I'm not sure. So it's always a possibility of asking the 3 big department heads, what warrant articles are you considering? We know Graham is considering at least 2, he talked about them tonight, but to see,
What was the second one?
capital reserve for fire truck fund, he puts that in every year.
Every year.
So I don't know if it's something that we should just say, can we, are you thinking about it? Can you give us a list?
Well, we should, we're probably 3 departments too late, though. The highway department and the fire and the police have already been here, but that's a great question to ask them going forward.
I don't think highway is contemplating a warrant article.
Yes, they are.
They'll be,
Yeah,
yes, they
they
will.
always do, the capital reserve.
There's at least 2 or 3 I've heard Phil discuss.
Yeah, for building replacement, truck replacement.
It's usually
What
about
was-
$100,000 into the capital reserve fund, and
But that's there every year, right?
Yeah.
every year, and also, is it the highway equipment? I don't remember the name
Yeah,
of the
there's-
fund exactly, but
There
they'll
is.
put, to accumulate it so that if they need a new vehicle, it does it a little each year instead of having, I don't
And
know how much
high-
these things are, but let's say 500,000 all at once.
And Highway, at the meeting last Wednesday, he mentioned the reserve fund and said that right now it does not have enough money to cover a new truck. So if something were to happen.
I should have been more specific and said a new one. Are you saying there's a new one also?
He did talk about potentially a new one, but I mean, it's all being considered. I mean, I know we had some discussion.
There is a unique piece of equipment that he believes he can access a trust fund for. Do you recollect that, Claudine?
Yes.
But that wouldn't impact the tax rate. That was the only other thing I thought he was talking about.
Well,
Had to-
I think I can just send an email
Yeah.
to the department heads and ask them to give us a list of the potential warrant articles.
Sure.
So that when we discuss the full budget coming up, that we can have at least a list
a
of
full
what they're
view.
looking for.
What do they envision?
Or what they envision, yeah, so that we can see the overall impact to the potential tax rate and for the total cost of what the budget is going to be.
Because there's different things when they ask for, when they do warrant articles for the trust funds with the trustees. Some of them are, they want to use the money, so they'll say, we want to expend whatever amount for XYZ. That doesn't affect the taxpayers because the
Right.
money's there. But if they want to add money to the funds, then that will affect the taxpayers.
Right, and as I think about it, Claudia, it was a piece of equipment to better care for the landfills and also be less expensive because he wouldn't have to rent equipment or rely on other cities or towns to lend him equipment. But that could come out of, that wasn't gonna affect the tax rate at all. Does that have to go on the ballot?
It does.
I
Certain,
thought we
well,
were
I
gonna
would
vote
have
for
to, I don't
that.
know which fund he was looking at using, I
land-
don't remember, but
Yeah.
some of the way that the funds were set up, that when you want to use money, you can't just go to the trustees and say, I spent $50,000 on something. You have to ask the voters to expend the money. And then once the vote goes through, then they could spend it.
There is a couple of, in there, that with the Board of Select Board approval, they can expend some funds. So-
Right, but I
so
think
it's
the
not
one
all-
he's
it's not
talking
everything.
about is one that they
Right.
can't.
All right, let's get back to presentations.
Sorry. Evening. Do you want me to just go over the changes?
Sure,
or-
yeah, you can give
Okay.
us kind of an update on the Recreation Department and
Okay.
overview.
I mean, overall, I don't think a lot has changed. Probably the biggest thing to add is more money for the senior lunches, which have been very popular. I think I did 10 of them this year, with another one coming up with the library, and I always fill it, and I always have people on the wait list. So I'd like to increase that to 4,000, even though it only says 2,000 so far. I'm gonna be closer to 3,000 by the end of the year. We moved the summer field trips bus from the budget into the revolving fund so that the people that are using the bus are the ones that are paying for it. It's been a theory, if you've been on the budget committee, it's been a theory that we've been moving towards trying to have the camp pay for the camp, basically. So, what else? Yeah. The other is details. So fire and police details, we need those for the Halloween, Christmas, and Easter activities at the rec center so that they can bring Santa, they can make sure that we're safe is the main thing, with the lights and the just the presence there. So that we've put, that's a new line in there to put it down for the 3 events that we have. That's the 2-2-3-2 for details.
If I could interrupt you, on the details, what is the there's nothing there before, and now suddenly there's something there. Why is that?
My understanding is that it's something that the fire and police department just did for us. That we just, I would call up the chief and say, hey, can you come on November 25th from 5 to 8, have somebody there, and they do. And then this year it seemed to change where,
They want money. They want you to pay for it.
yeah,
Remember, you had to add one for the elections as well.
yeah. And it,
So there was a discussion at a select board meeting, maybe about a month ago,
right,
that at the department head meeting.
right. I couldn't be there unfortunately, but yes.
All events that were happening, if a department or a committee were having an event and they would need police or fire details, that they need to include it in their budget. And that it would stop coming out of the overtime budget of the police and the fire, which is where they would put it in the police and fire budget for different events, but the amount of events that we're having has increased over the last year or so, and so the select board has asked the different departments and committees to put it into their budget.
So we know with the situation of the police revolving fund, does the fire department collect?
All details go in, it's not called the police, it's a public service detail fund. That's what it's called. So all details go into that detail fund. So the police and the fire all go into that one fund.
So does the fire chief participate in overseeing that account?
No, the select board oversees that account.
But
if the fire department needed
with
something.
input from the police chief, does the fire chief have input into that process the way the police chief does?
If he needed to spend something, he could ask and they could approve it.
So the fire department could access that?
Yeah, the last thing that was bought was the truck, the pickup truck for the fire.
Out of the so-called,
Out of that
what we
detail, yeah, that was,
clumsily call the
Chief
detail
Johnson that
account
told
was
us that.
fire.
But I will say 98% of the details is police.
Right.
I maybe had 5 all
I'm still
year.
trying to figure out how it works, that's all.
That
So
detail
question
fund
on-
pays for all the payroll and taxes for the officers doing the detail, and it pays, and then the rest accumulates so that they have monies for emergency purchases. Like he mentioned, the new guns he had to purchase and stuff like that.
So a question on moving, if we're technically taking the funding that was being paid on the overtime of the police and the fire.
It wasn't.
And now it's going, okay, so it wasn't in there? Okay, because I'm saying
He
that
was
those
just
numbers
reducing
aren't
the
reducing.
detail, that public safety fund. So he was taking out of that fund monies to pay the employees for the detail.
For the details, okay.
Which made it kept going down and down and down. He has now raised it up by considerably this year, or the last 2 years since he's been on.
How did he raise it up? I understand how it went down, because you're spending it on,
By not giving free details to different groups.
And the troubling part here for me is that there's a group of volunteer, I forget what it's called now, some public service volunteer control group or something like that. They have to take a 4-hour course online, and people like Peter Coffin, Ralph Murphy, others were part of that, and for a nonprofit, they could volunteer to direct traffic or do whatever. It was free. The chief has said he doesn't want to do that, and in part because they don't make any money on it. So he'll say it's a responsibility. It's somebody gets hurt and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, he could use this volunteer group, and there would be no charge, and it would save some money to do that. So, and other towns use that, like in Exeter, you see that all the time when I go over there. There's a private group that does it. You can also hire private groups to use it, but here, it's got to be the police department.
We, just speak for recreation, there's a part of our program that depends on Santa coming on, like the fire truck, for example, just that, the kids love that, seeing that, so it would have to be somebody in a truck can do the whole, I don't know if that's what the volunteers do or not, but that's part of our program, is that the Easter Bunny arrives or the Santa arrives, on the big.
So do you
fire
pay for
truck.
that?
What's that?
Do you pay for that?
No,
Oh, okay, all right.
no, but it's just, what I'm saying, it's different, it couldn't just be a volunteer just doing, making sure the roads are clear, it's a little bit different.
Let me ask another.
If I understand correctly.
Yeah, let me ask another question. Does, your name's Paul? Is that
Yes.
right? Does Paul pay the same per hour for a detail as Unitil and Asplin Tree Service does?
It's up, not up. It depends, I didn't mean to say up. It depends on the event. Sometimes if they don't need a cruiser, then they won't charge the cruiser fee, but they'll just charge the admin and the employee fee.
But I mean, I assume
cover
that
those
if-
costs.
I assume if Unitil doesn't need a cruiser, you don't charge them a cruiser fee, right?
They do. No matter what, they get the cruiser fee because that police officer has to drive over there. So what the PD does is they'll take off the cruiser fee. So really, all they're charging the town for the town events is for the employee to get paid,
$55 an hour minimum for.
plus 18 for admin, which is the taxes that covers that 55.
And that depends on the event.
And it depends on the event.
So how do you articulate it? How is it defined?
The PD and fire get what the event is, and then they have to make a decision based on how many people, where it's located, various things, I honestly.
Except there's no written policy. It's purely subjective. It's purely subjective and up to the chief of how he wants to do it, what he wants to charge, basically. What, do you know what can you be precise as what the admin, where does that go?
I almost said social security, but there's no, well, it would be social security if it's a part-time police officer. Social security, Medicare.
Pension.
If it's a full-time officer, not the
insurance.
retirement, what?
Health insurance?
Health insurance, if it's a full-time officer. I forget where else, I have a whole chart, I just can't look it up right this second, but it is a complete wash to cover all the expenses. I can try to find it.
The example that I use is they had a ukulele thing, people parking over here, and they had a police detail with a cruiser and everything over here. And that's, to me, would have been a perfect opportunity if we needed somebody to have this volunteer group that are volunteers for not-for-profits. They would direct the traffic.
So for that one, he said that they didn't need one.
Right,
So-
Paul opted to have it.
And that wasn't charged.
It wasn't charged.
Really?
No.
Okay.
Well, that point needs to be made.
Yes, that needs to be.
That's,
But moving forward, we're not doing those we're doing those at the rec center now. So that we have bathrooms available, we'd have ice cream we were passing out, so we're not doing it on the plains anymore. We felt it was better to have it at the rec center. So moving forward, that won't be one, it'll be Easter, Halloween, and Christmas.
So they're gonna charge $22.32 for 3 events?
3, police and fire, yes. Yeah. An hour for 4 hours.
It's like 90 something.
90.
Because we have to budget for the cruiser, because we don't know if they need a cruiser fee or not. He doesn't know.
Paul, how many kids are in your program in the summer?
This summer,
Yeah, in the summer program.
there was about 62 to 65 a week and about 150 different kids.
Say again?
About 150 different kids that
so
came
the
up
whole summer,
somewhat.
50 different kids, average of 60, 65 a week.
Okay. And,
Very good.
And do you have some kind of sliding scale for folks that don't have, is there a sliding scale for folks that are up against it a little bit financially, or is it a straight fee, or?
It's pretty much a straight fee, but people would contact me and I would talk to Marissa, or if there's people that struggle with money, yeah.
Okay, so obviously, I mean,
It's pretty cheap compared to other camps,
Yeah,
honestly.
like Camp Lincoln or something.
yeah, it's much
How much
cheaper.
is it a week?
So, depends whether if you live in Kingston, next year it'll be 170 for the week and 210 for non-residents, but that includes field trips, ice cream on Tuesdays, and pizza on Fridays.
How much is it?
210 for non-residents a week, and 170 for
And is it,
residents.
does it come down if you have more kids in the
Yes.
program and this family?
So if you live in Kingston, your second, third, fourth child is 50% off. If
Okay,
you don't live in
okay.
Kingston, 25%
Good,
off.
okay, yeah.
So, yeah. It's, if you do the hours, or the amount of hours 10 hours a week, 10 hours a day times 5, I mean, it's pretty cheap.
And I assume that it's much, it's gotta be cheaper than people have kids in daycare.
It definitely is, yeah.
It's a ton cheaper than that.
Yeah, okay. No,
Plus,
that's
they
very
have
good.
all these wonderful counselors playing with them and go to field
Yeah,
trips, and, you know,
Right?
it's,
I think you're right.
I get
it's a
it.
fun, you know, it's a great, you know, it's different than Camp Lincoln, and we don't compete with Camp Lincoln because it's two different programs. It's just, for some kids it's perfect, for some kids it's not, and I would say go to Camp Lincoln. You want more structure, more, you know, activities. Kids at my camp, our camp, you know, a little more laid back. They love to swim, love the field trips. There's a field trip every week, so it's pretty popular.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And the other one that went up was Halloween, because we had, well, one person estimated we had almost 1,000 people there last month for the.
Crazy, like a trunk or treat.
Crazy fun, I would say.
Now, is that,
A lot of
is
people.
that, is that just for Kingston folks, or?
That's, there was a lot of, but from what I saw, there was a lot of Kingston residents, but we didn't limit it to
I
Kingston.
saw a bunch of 30-year-olds from Newburyport.
I saw some Newton kids there.
What's up? Yeah, I think so. It's, people, we don't pay for the candy. Right. So the people that, so the candy is not an expense. The expenses are things like, putting up the lawn and, you know, lawn animals, keeping those up, buying the supplies, the food, the drink, that kind of stuff, buying new stuff to decorate that might have, you know, broken over those, you know, since last year or something. So yeah, that should be plenty, I think. It's hard, it's really hard to judge. I didn't think we'd have that many because there's so many of them around. So we were a little the trunks were a little overwhelmed, but it was a lot of fun. That's what recreation is, just fun.
Great, any other questions? No? All right, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, have a great night.
Yes, you too. That's, we have, do we get everything? We got one more, trustees? Yeah, I don't, that's why I was confused, because I didn't see anybody.
Gary, have you heard anything further from Brad? Have you heard anything from Brad?
Do we want to reschedule them to next Sunday?
Yeah, yeah, let's do that.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Yeah,
Motion to move the trustees of the trust fund to the schedule for the 19th of November.
all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
What do you mean? I don't want.
All right, motion passes. Any leftover questions from last week or even tonight? I see wheels turning.
Well, I think I've already covered it, but I'll state it again. I had asked for the capital reserves balance, so.
That's the trustees, I don't have that.
He told me to talk to you, so I talked to Brad, he referred me.
Okay,
I don't do any of that bookkeeping, it's a fight getting the balances from them as well, so.
okay, so we've gotta let him know that he's rescheduled anyway, so when we do that, and who's the liaison on? Gary, okay. Touch base.
I did get a memo from Brad. I just got it. I'm going to read it.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. Can we reschedule my appearance for the budget committee? I need to find out the background on these numbers that are submitted. So I have to be back. My meeting, Braintree in time for the meeting, and besides, I have no information on these numbers. Claudine may have some input, on where these numbers came from, but no budget requests have been approved by the trustees at this point. And our next scheduled meeting is on the 20th of November.
Okay, so that would be after the 19th.
So it'll have to be after the 20th if he's gonna do it.
But I want to be fair. I think I got a copy. When was that mailed to you? That's today?
Just texted him.
9:45.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it then. I thought, I'm on that committee and that sounded familiar. And I just realized maybe I had gotten it, but I wouldn't have gotten it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we're going around and around on that, so, I'll try to pin him down to a face-to-face meeting and get this resolved, because
Can you do that
he
then?
asked me to get the numbers and pull them together,
Yep.
and then
We did,
Paul and Phil and I met.
So that came from you?
yes, and then I sent him the budget, well,
Yes, I understand.
the section.
Yes.
And then I said, your meeting is on Sunday, blah, 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 or at this time at the town hall, and I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, so our last meeting with department presentations is the 19th, which is next week. So that would be problematic if they don't do anything until the 20th.
Right.
So do you think that you'll be successful? I'm not being wise.
We need to be successful, that's all there is to it. We're both retired people, so I don't understand why we can't.
You may have defined the problem in the state.
What?
You're both retired people.
Right, so, you know, if Phil and Paul can make time to sit down and discuss this with me for half an hour,
Yep,
I don't understand why Brad cannot when it's his work.
when he's chairman of the committee.
So,
Okay. But we should probably try to do it next Sunday. No, I mean, get this done.
Yeah, we
Do you
need
want
to
us to
present.
like go over what we did so that you guys have a heads up before?
Yeah, I'd rather.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this I can speak to with some confidence. I think that meeting between the three of you would be is a really valuable exercise.
So just so we make sure we capture this, Claudine, you're gonna reach out to Brad
Yep,
and ask for, make sure he understands that he has been moved to the 19th, but that is our last meeting with the department heads, so he needs to make every effort to attend. And that when he attends or prior to attending, if we can have the balances of all the capital reserve funds.
And you know what, Claudine, if it's necessary, maybe to have a meeting earlier, that on Sunday or later this week. I'm thinking of who's on the committee. It's likely you could get a quorum of the trust funds trustees to meet if that's necessary.
is it necessary?
I don't know. I leave that up to you. I mean that sincerely.
Is she leaving?
She's gotta go get
Just
some
for a
coffee.
minute.
I trust your judgment, but it might be necessary.
Right, because I know when I sent the notes out,
last time, Karen did ask a couple of questions.
Yep.
And I replied to her, this is what Phil and Paul felt were appropriate.
Right,
So, and I did not get another feedback from her.
right.
The
But I think she would be available, I would be available, you would be available.
Yeah.
And Brad would be available. So you've got a majority of the committee if it's necessary to meet before then.
The problem is we need to give a 2-week notice of a meeting.
2 weeks?
It's a public meeting.
I don't think it's gonna be 2
No, I
weeks.
don't.
Meeting is 48 hours.
Right, that's the same statute as Matt, 2 days, yeah. It's the same.
So the public meeting needs to be posted at least 48 hours. I think there's some requirements for different committees, but it's
Okay,
not, I think it's like historic district and heritage have a 1 week.
yeah. Supervisors have much more.
That's a different because it's voter registration.
Right,
But like us, select board is 48 hours.
yeah.
Just,
So we had a conversation once that any money that were voted on warrants, those monies have not yet been deposited into any of the funds. So any of the numbers.
Correct.
Which are values as of the end of last.
So once we figure out the tax rate, then I will adjust the budget numbers for 2022 to increase if the warrant article hit the budget and not a trust fund, to take into account that. And then for ones that I have to transfer money to the trust funds, that's when I transfer the money. So it's done in like December.
So capital reserve fund balances will not be timed if you get them from him. So do we want?
So if there was $100,000 warrant article, it will, whatever is in the balance will go up by that.
So that's the capital,
look, tax rate though should be out.
It's not yet.
It's
We're
not.
waiting. It's been a fight, and we're waiting.
Okay, but
We
it should be any time, right?
They said within a week or two.
Who's the fight with?
No, I just say it's been a fight trying to get it done.
DRA.
It's the state. There's nothing we can do about it.
They said, yeah.
So we send in our revenues,
No, I understand how it works. In that
and
general
the
sense.
school does too, because we're in a
Isn't
district.
this are there other cities and towns that are waiting?
Yes, only 60, as of Thursday or Friday, Tammy said there was only, I could be wrong, but like 60 towns that have gotten their tax rate.
How many cities and towns are there?
It's like 100 something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact.
200.
Well, that's something that people should know, because what I've heard from people is,
Tammy just sent out something, because we finally got in touch with the town. So what happens with our town is because we're in a school district, it affects Newton, the schools. So for the school information, they have to wait for the Newton and Kingston information to go through. Like, so there's a lot of things that get put into the mix. And then then the state sends it to the Department of Education, and the Department of Education has to approve the district part of it. And then it comes back, and then they could talk to me. And then once I get the numbers, they go over and we have to estimate the revenue that we're gonna receive from October, November, December. And then
but it's important for the average person to be aware of this discussion.
Tammy just sent it, Friday, saying that we're gonna get the results in 2 weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, the key piece of information you just gave me, which may seem like nothing to most people, but when you tell me that only 60 tax rates have been set, that tells me that the problem is not with Newton or Kingston.
Right.
That tells me that there's
It is.
a
It's just the
systemic
state.
problem,
With
it's
the
either
state.
statewide
Yeah.
or within the department itself.
It is.
But because of people don't realize that, and
Yeah.
because of the large increase in expenses here last year, and everything else, people are worried that it's an issue with us, and it's not. In fact, I didn't know that it wasn't until just now.
Yeah, she's been getting tons of calls from residents, but there's
Yes.
nothing we can do.
They're anxious.
Well,
They're
I'm
anxious.
anxious.
Yes.
Because
Just
we,
Just imagine if you had a $45,000
I got the
electric bill.
information, we had our emergency select board meeting on November 2nd last year. I call it an emergency meeting because we had to call them in to set the tax rate.
Right.
But that was on November 2nd
Right.
last year.
But the thing, I think, the other thing, as a budget committee, and I don't have an answer to this, but I asked the chief, as you heard, I mean, I don't see any end in sight to the taxes of a lot of people going up $300, $400, $500, $600 a year, every year.
Well,
I mean,
it will not end until it ends. And the way that it will end is when a budget gets defeated and there's a general acceptance and realization that there has to be a different approach.
But do we know if the default budget's higher?
I haven't.
Yeah, because they were saying the default could potentially be higher.
it's possible, but probably not likely, not given the numbers that we have here. I do remember one year.
I just got all the contracts and everything, so now I have to put it together.
I do remember one year when actually the capital reserve fund for the police, fire, and the highway did not pass. The article was voted down. That was probably 10 years ago, but we did have one year that actually happened. They did, the budget passed, I think, but the others did not. So
I'm not adept at New Hampshire budgets, but my guess is that there's a way, people who do it can design these packages so that when there's, so the default budget will always often be lower. But my guess is if people just grit their teeth and pay slightly higher that year, the following year, that's not going to be the case. No, but the default's not going to be lower if you defeated a budget in 23. Then in 24, you really are starting right from scratch. And eventually, people are going to, I mean, I'm not an expert at Kingston, but I like to think I know people, but there's going to be a revolt.
On the default budget, if we could have that number for comparison by the December 13th meeting, I think that would be really helpful, because that's when we're going over like kind of that final overlook of the budget for us with the wage matrix update.
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I was planning on that.
perfect, that would be great.
Do we want it before then?
I mean, before would be great, but.
Because I'm just, so our next meeting's the 19th, then we don't have one until the 13th of December.
But is it reasonable to have it by the 19th?
No.
That's
why I said it.
No, but I'm just, I mean, it's a whole month away, like, we're gonna have all these meetings and then we're gonna wait a month to look at the
So
full
what if we
budget.
had it on December 1st, what would we do?
We have nothing.
Right. So,
Yeah,
I'm just,
we're
I'm
getting
asking the
into
question.
Christmas time. I just followed the same schedule that we've had for the last couple of years. We did usually take a little bit of a break. Last year, we scheduled a couple of extra meetings in there because we had some departments come back. I don't know what we're doing. I don't think we're planning on doing that yet, but I did schedule that for that wage matrix update.
I mean, the issue is if we cut somebody's budget by $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, you know, I mean, I guess, and that's what we did last year. I forget how much it was, but we did that, and they all came in and they were, but it's like at the same time, we asked them to find the areas they could do that, but I'm not so sure we need to do that. I mean, in other words, if the budget is the budget, so whatever we end up coming up with. And
one thing on that, like we asked them to take out that money last year, and then this year we asked them to level fund it, so we're comparing it to numbers that already had stuff removed out of it.
and what was the negative result of those cuts?
You'd have to ask each department.
there was none.
There was, the answer to the question is there was none.
I guess that's kind of my point, is that if we're going to ask them to make cuts, that we shouldn't ask them a week or two before Christmas or after that. So if we have the meeting on the 13th to review it, they make the cuts, we have to meet again. And we have, when is our budget review? It's on the 6th.
For decision day is the 6th.
So if we're talking about waiting until the 13th to review the full budget, then to go back to the department heads to ask them to make cuts, I feel like that timeline is shortened with Christmas, and last year we met between Christmas and New Year's, and we had all kinds of things. I think I'm just trying to pull that schedule up a week or so we can.
How many line items in the fire budget? Like, just numbers, what, 15, 20? I think my point is this, that DPW, those are your significant budgets. They know those, in police, that's right. They know those budgets, like any small businessman knows a $3 or $4 million budget. And if you ask them to cut, I bet they could tell you in 5 minutes where, if they had to cut, they'd cut. I don't.
Right, and there's other there's a bunch of other notes that we've taken within the budget of, can you cut this, can you reduce this?
Right.
And so we haven't reviewed any of those in total. So I have, like, we talked about the planning board, I think, I'm trying to think of other departments, but we've asked them, we've noted them, those numbers that we've looked at to see if there was a needed for a cut, and so we haven't reviewed that at all.
But my guess is those are kind of, those approaches to those budget departments will be traditional, the way we usually approach and find not even nickels and dimes, but pennies to cut. If you're talking about significantly reducing the budget, you're gonna have to ask the heads of those 3 or 4 departments to more or less do what we asked them to do last year.
Right, but we gave them numbers. We actually told each department, we went to highway and said, please cut this amount of money. We went to fire, we went to police and said, please cut these amount of money, and then we made cuts within the budget. And then we let the department heads know that they wanted to, and some of them requested not to cut a line item, but found it someplace else in their budget. And I just want to make sure we give them all that amount of time before we get to decision day, January 6th.
But, except I think it's unwise for us to try to micromanage and say this line is too much or that line. I think we have to say the overall budget's too much or whatever we think it is, or it's too little or whatever. And we're saying, we're not asking, we're saying cut your budget by 25,000, whatever it is. And then it's up to them. I mean, it's not like, I don't think we can say, you got too much money in there for hoses, or you get, we don't know these things. It's beyond our.
That isn't really the approach is the taxes going up too quickly, too fast, too much and too quickly. That's really it. That's my criticism of it, is just way too much money, I don't know of any budget in Massachusetts has gone up by those percentages in the last 4 or 5 years.
I gotta tell you, the
Local budget, local, not state, but local.
feedback that's come out of the Timberlane district towns is that the increase in their tax rate is all attributable to the school district. And we have very little control over the school budget. So I don't think it's these little 100,000 here and $200 there. I think it's more attributable to the school district.
Right.
I mean, in this budget, we haven't even got to the executive yet, and their increase is 73%.
Well,
There's another concern that I have, which is when I've been in this position before, I usually only had to deal with one person, like a mayor, or whomever, which we don't deal with here, but oftentimes what they'll say is, Jack, I'm gonna cut $400,000 out of this budget, and you're gonna vote for it when it's over with. Is that, you know what I mean? And I don't, what I'm worried about is if there's a bunch of cuts made, because I mean, if they make to me, there was an implied negotiation or agreement that took place last year, which is, if you cut these out, we're gonna vote for the budget. And I'm not 100% sure that I'm gonna vote for these budgets or some of these warrant items.
But it's our budget, right?
It's a collective budget.
It's, if you go back and look at it, the budget committee, it is the budget committee's budget, not the selectmen's budget, not the department head's budget. the budget committee puts forth a budget for the town to vote on. So if you're telling me you're not going to vote for a budget that you're on the committee for, then we're not doing something correctly. That's kind of how I look at it. The budget committee is supposed to put together a budget that we want to put forth to the taxpayers of Kingston that we think is fair to the taxpayers and to the town. We're not an advisory committee, we're in a municipal budget committee, and it's our budget that we take all the info that we're supposed to get from the departments and put it together.
Yeah, I don't know as I 100% buy into that, but we're not gonna settle that here tonight. In other words, this is a collective process that a lot of stuff goes into this completely outside of this body. And we walk into situations, I mean, the town's been here for what, 300 years? So at a certain extent, you walk in and you inherit a situation and you try to figure out how the parts move together and you try to make incremental change. But when I look at what the taxes on an average house of Kingston have done over the last 5 years, I'm not saying anyone's wrong or anything, but I'm telling you, it's not fair to the taxpayer.
Most of it's school though. If you look at the tax rate last year, 69% of it is school. Our town budget was $4.64. The year prior it was $4.62. And again, it's 70% coming out of the school. So we control such a small, I mean, we've been flat as a committee.
We control more than a third of it.
Well, according to the breakdown, it's 20% because you pay state education, local ed,
Okay.
and county.
I thought you said 60 odd percent.
69 is
school.
education, so
Yeah.
we were 20%, the budget.
And then the
we're
other
in
percent
control
is
of.
state.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, we as a committee, I think 462 to 464, it went up 2 cents. But the tax rate, I 100% agree, it's the school that went up several dollars, not us.
And the interesting part of it, and I think it's certainly fair to discuss, I mean, basically the Kingston Newton taxpayers, the Newton Kingston Taxpayers Association control the school board. They have the majority of the people on the school board. So this is a group of people that are very tight with the money and very careful. And yet at the same time, you see what's happening. So that's why I raise that as the esoteric question in the big picture here of the school and town and everything. I don't know what the relief is. I mean, it's because even in towns like in Salem, where they got a huge amount of businesses and everything else, the tax is still pretty high. So it's like, it's not necessarily a panacea. Sure, it helps that businesses come in and commercial and so on and so forth, and industrial, but I don't have an answer to this. I'm just saying, and I don't know, there may not be an answer as you're saying, and what you're saying, Kim, that with the school being what it is, and yet you have a conservative group fiscally running that.
But I can say, as a supervisor of the checklist, we have to be there every year for that meeting. We have to check in people in case there's a vote taken. And the number of residents that show up for that meeting is really sad.
Dwindling.
You know, when you consider that it is a big chunk of our tax bill and nobody goes. So,
Even our deliberative session, nobody, I mean, the employees show, the department people show up.
Usual suspects.
yeah, so,
Nobody was here that wasn't employed.
but everybody in the town is gonna wanna take it out on the budget committee when the,
We'll post a little graph of how the tax rate breaks down.
yeah. Well, everybody gets the bill, they know what the breakdown is, but,
That's a good idea, that we should have showing where, that the town.
Pie chart.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's in the annual report
From last year.
Yeah, I mean,
we
the
can't do
public
this
has
year,
access to it, they just have to wanna read the reports. All the details are there, no, you're right. Are there any hidden costs we haven't talked about, like COLA's in here, there will be no pay for performance coming at us at any point, like, is this a result, or is that still
That's
taken
gonna
up?
be discussed on Wednesday, I think. I did hear some rumblings of those 3 words of that pay for performance. My reaction was that they're gonna have a fight on that one, so they better be ready to explain it.
What was the last thing you said?
they better be ready to explain it, because,
So we, in theory, aren't even seeing necessarily the budget.
right, and COLA on the budget, some of them are there and some of them aren't, it looks like.
I put all the COLAs in.
Okay, maybe I was looking, I'm not
You
sure
said
if I
that at the
have today's
beginning.
copy or
Those
last
that
week's
didn't have
copy.
it, you put it in, right? Or had it put in?
No, at the beginning, the very beginning.
first meeting.
Budgets that weren't in, I just put the prior year in, but I didn't put any COLA in. And then the board, I think it was last week or the week before, they approved a COLA
Of 4%.
percent. So for now, until we decide, that's dependent on, the wage matrix and what's decided on that. So that could go away, that could go down, like that wasn't a set number, but they asked me to put it in the budget, so I put 4% COLA in the budget for all departments.
And that passed 4-1. One select person wanted 3% but the motion was made and carried to make it 4%.
A lot of companies do either or. You're getting paid for performance or you're getting COLA. You're not getting both. It's an interesting approach the town's taking. Even the government.
Well, the pay performance is gone now. So.
No, that's not what they just said.
Well,
We'll see.
Yeah,
It was-
that's
Yeah,
interesting.
I think that's Wednesday, part of that conversation
Right.
on the wages and the wage matrix. Maybe. I don't know, it's not my meeting, so I'm curious to how it's gonna go. I'm not sure if anybody knows whose meeting it is.
is the meeting Wednesday a budget committee meeting? Or
It's
is it,
not.
It's not.
It was
It's
asked,
a joint, so the wage matrix, work group, I don't wanna call it committee because it's not, we didn't wanna wait till December 13th. So to present what we have so far, we asked to have a joint meeting with the select board and the budget committee so we can present to both. Because the select board hasn't even, except for the, two people that are on it, hasn't seen what we've worked on, so.
Dying to see it.
What time is that meeting?
the meeting on Wednesday is at 7
7.
instead of 6.
Okay.
There's a couple of. So next Sunday's meeting, we have 3 committees that are presenting, so budget, which will be really short. We have we do have an increase. Zoning, which should be pretty short, and then selectmen, the executive committee that's got that 73% increase. And the trustees, because we moved them. You brought up a concern about waiting till the 13th of December to go over everything. Do we want to go over some of the possible changes next Sunday to add that in?
Depends how late it is.
Well, that meeting starts at 5. It's on the schedule for 5, so it is a little earlier.
You want me to tell Brad?
I'm sorry?
You want me to tell Brad he's on the next meeting,
Yep.
Yeah,
the 19th?
yeah.
No, Claudine is going to do that.
Claudine.
Yep, so I have that, Claudine is gonna reach out to Brad to make sure he gets those numbers and that he understands those numbers that have been presented to him for the budget.
Make sure that we don't need to have a forum to present those numbers and also come up with those, fund balances.
For,
So I'll ask Brad's memo because it was to me
all right,
and tell him that Claudine is,
I'm gonna copy you.
okay.
Watch your email
Just
for
tell
it.
him that you'll be working with him
Yeah,
and advise him of what he's presenting.
yeah.
Okay? That puts it back where you, and you guys are gonna get together.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell him next year, no. I'm gonna tell him the liaison is Gary, go with Gary.
So we,
All right, so tentatively, depending on time, we might have some time for some discussion on next Sunday, but we'll leave that as tentative. Already talked about the meeting on Wednesday.
Can we make sure that if we get some of the action items that have come out of the minutes before we have a full discussion. So I believe last week, Phil was supposed to get us some of the numbers for salt and break down a couple of things, so I just
And the
want to make
trash,
sure
those breakdown.
that we try to get all those action, the request of additional information before that meeting.
Okay. Do you have those notes, right, that you were taking those? Okay.
But I just want to make sure we are aware that we have outstanding information that we're supposed to get to evaluate the full budget.
So if you send those to me, and then I'll check with the liaisons for those departments. We'll do it that way. All right. Any other new business that anyone wants to go over?
Paul, I think you can double-side the.
Yeah, I will. I printed that at the very last minute, and I don't know what's going on with my printer, but sometimes like I'll just print one to test it, because it'll print single even though I have the double-sided clicked off, so I have to.
It's AI. It's AI running it.
These are budgets for all departments.
It's been hijacked by Exxon Mobil.
All right, so motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor? Opposed? Nobody. All right.